परेड, एक कदम बाएं बंदूक चल। परेड, आगे बढ़ेगा मध्य से, तेज चल। परेड, विश्राम होगा, विश्राम। सावधान होगा, सावधान। पांच आर्मड कंटिजेंट, पांच अनआर्मड कंटिजेंट, बैंड और बिगलर, आप आदेश के लिए हाजिर है श्रीमान। परेड, विश्राम होगा, विश्राम।
Once again, good morning all of you. I wish you all a very happy 76th Republic Day. Chala baga perform chesaru. For the benefit of those who can't understand Telugu, you all performed very well. I congratulate all of you, all the contingents, all the armed, unarmed contingents. You have done extremely well. I would like to congratulate you, compliment you for putting up a good show. I wish you all the very best in times to come. Thank you.
ముందుగా
ఈరోజు మార్చ్ పాస్ట్లో ఉత్తమ ప్రదర్శన కనపరిచినటువంటి ఇండియన్ ఆర్మీ కంటింజెంట్ మన డీజీపీ గారి చేతుల మీదుగా క్యాష్ ప్రైజ్ అందుకోవాల్సిందిగా కోరుతున్నాం. అదేవిధంగా సెకండ్ బెస్ట్ తమిళనాడు కంటింజెంట్, అన్ఆర్మ్డ్ కంటింజెంట్స్, బెస్ట్ అన్ఆర్మ్డ్ కంటింజెంట్ సోషల్ వెల్ఫేర్ స్కూల్స్, సెకండ్ బెస్ట్ అన్ఆర్మ్డ్ కంటింజెంట్ ఎన్సీసీ బాయ్స్. ఆగండి. ఇన్ఛార్జ్ క్యాష్ ప్రైజ్ తీసుకోవాల్సిందిగా కోరుతున్నాం. అదేవిధంగా పైప్ బ్యాండ్ అన్ఆర్మ్డ్ కంటింజెంట్స్ గౌరవనీయ ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్ డీజీపీ గారి చేతుల మీదుగా సర్టిఫికేట్స్ కంటింజెంట్ వైజ్ అందుకోవాల్సిందిగా కోరుతున్నాం. ముందుగా ఎన్సీసీ బాయ్స్, మన గౌరవనీయ డీజీపీ గారి చేతుల మీదుగా అన్ఆర్మ్డ్ కంటింజెంట్ ఇన్ఛార్జెస్, కంటింజెంట్ కమాండర్స్ సర్టిఫికేట్స్ అందుకోవాల్సిందిగా కోరుతున్నాం. ముందుగా ఎన్సీసీ బాయ్స్ కంటింజెంట్, ఎన్సీసీ గర్ల్స్ కంటింజెంట్, సోషల్ వెల్ఫేర్ రెసిడెన్షియల్ స్కూల్స్ కంటింజెంట్, భారత్ స్కౌట్స్ అండ్ గైడ్స్ కంటింజెంట్, యూత్ రెడ్ క్రాస్ కంటింజెంట్, భారత్ స్కౌట్స్ అండ్ గైడ్స్ కంటింజెంట్, ఆఖరుగా యూత్ రెడ్ క్రాస్ కంటింజెంట్. బహుమతులు, సర్టిఫికెట్లు అందించిన గౌరవనీయ డీజీపీ వర్యులకు ధన్యవాదములు. పరేడ్ సౌదర్న్ హోగా సావధాన్. परेड तीनों तीन काल में दाहिने चल दाहिने मुड़ इंडियन आर्मी कंटिंजेंट बाय से एक लाइन बनते चल परेड विश्राम दाहिने मुड़ थे चल नेक्स्ट कंटिंजेंट Dahinamur Techal, NCC Girls contingent. Dahinamur Techal, Social Welfare Residential Schools contingent. రావాలి తొందర రండి. Dahinamur Techal, next Bar Scouts and Guides contingent. స్పీడ్గా రావాలమ్మా, కొంచెం ఫాస్ట్. Dahinamur Techal, next Youth Red Cross contingent. ఫాస్ట్గా మా కదలండి, మీ ప్లేస్లో నిలబడు. Dahinamur Techal, Brass Band contingent. సర్దుకోండి మా. సీను ఫాస్ట్గా రావాలమ్మా. కదలండి కొంచెం స్పీడ్. సుబ్బారావు గారు కూర్చోండి. దహినమూర్తి తేచాల్ 6th బెటాలియన్ స్టాఫ్. వెంకట్రావు మీరు కూడా.
Let us dedicate ourselves to the serving of a nation with honesty, compassion, and dedication. Together, let us build an India that stands as a beacon of hope, peace, and prosperity for the entire world. Republic Day is a reminder of our journey as a nation, a journey that began with the sacrifices of countless freedom fighters and visionaries who dreamed of an independent India governed by justice, equality, and liberty. Their courage and determination laid the foundation for the country we proudly call home today. Republic Day is not just a day to celebrate our achievements, but also to introspect and set new goals. As responsible citizen, it is imperative that we uphold the principles of the Constitution in our daily lives. Let us respect the laws of land, promote unity and harmony, and work towards eradicating discrimination in all its forms. It's our duty to empower the marginalized, support the underprivileged, and create opportunities for every citizen to thrive. We must also acknowledge the immense contribution of our armed forces, police, and paramilitary forces who protect our borders and maintain law and order. Their dedication and sacrifices ensure that we sleep peacefully at night. Today, let us salute their courage and express our deepest gratitude for their unwavering service. Republic Day is also an occasion to celebrate our diversity, which is our greatest strength. With over 1.4 billion people, multiple religions, languages, and cultures, India is a shining example of unity in diversity. This diversity enriches our heritage and makes us unique on the global map. Let us take a moment to remember the vision of our great leaders. Mahatma Gandhi, the father of our nation, emphasized the importance of truth, non-violence, and self-reliance. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar reminded us of the importance of equality.
మరికొద్ది క్షణాల్లోనే గౌరవనీయులైన ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్ రాష్ట్ర ముఖ్యమంత్రి వర్యులు శ్రీ నారా చంద్రబాబు నాయుడు గారు ఈ ప్రాంగణంలోకి రానున్నారు. గౌరవనీయులైన ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్ రాష్ట్ర ముఖ్యమంత్రి వర్యులు శ్రీ నారా చంద్రబాబు నాయుడు గారు ఈ ప్రాంగణంలోకి విచ్చేశారు.
Honorable Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, Sri Nara Chandrababu Naidu Garu has arrived at this premises.
శ్రీ కె విజయానంద్ ఐఏఎస్ ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్ రాష్ట్ర ప్రభుత్వ ప్రధాన కార్యదర్శి, శ్రీ సిహెచ్ ద్వారకా తిరుమలరావు ఐపీఎస్ ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్ రాష్ట్ర డైరెక్టర్ జనరల్ ఆఫ్ పోలీస్ మరియు ఇతర ఉన్నతాధికారులు గౌరవనీయులైన ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్ రాష్ట్ర ముఖ్యమంత్రి వర్యులు శ్రీ నారా చంద్రబాబు నాయుడు గారికి స్వాగతం పలుకుతున్నారు. మరికొద్ది క్షణాల్లోనే ఈనాటి కార్యక్రమ ముఖ్య అతిథి గౌరవనీయులైన ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్ రాష్ట్ర గవర్నర్ శ్రీ అబ్దుల్ నజీర్ గారు ఈ ప్రాంగణంలోకి రానున్నారు.
Within a short while, today's chief guest and esteemed governor of Andhra Pradesh, Sri Abdul Nazir ji, will arrive at this premises. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar reminded us of the importance of education, equality, and fraternity. Their teachings are as relevant today as they were decades ago. As we celebrate this Republic Day, let us pledge to build an India that is not only powerful but also compassionate. Today's chief guest and esteemed governor of Andhra Pradesh, Sri Abdul Nazir ji, has arrived at this premises.
ఈనాటి కార్యక్రమ ముఖ్య అతిథి గౌరవనీయులైన ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్ రాష్ట్ర గవర్నర్ శ్రీ అబ్దుల్ నజీర్ గారు ఈ ప్రాంగణంలోకి విచ్చేశారు.
Today's chief guest and esteemed governor of Andhra Pradesh, Sri Abdul Nazir ji, has arrived at this premises.
ఈనాటి కార్యక్రమ ముఖ్య అతిథి గౌరవనీయులైన ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్ రాష్ట్ర గవర్నర్ శ్రీ అబ్దుల్ నజీర్ గారు ఈ ప్రాంగణంలోకి విచ్చేశారు.
Honorable Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, Sri Nara Chandrababu Naidu Garu has received esteemed governor and is introducing senior civil and police officials. Sri K. Vijayanand IAS, Chief Secretary to Government, Sri C.H. Dwarka Tirumalrao IPS, Director General of Police of
विंटर्स में हेल्दी लुकिंग स्किन के लिए आई ट्रस्ट ओनली निविया बॉडी मिल्क, जिसका यूनिक डीप मॉइस्चर सीरम दे 48 आवर लॉन्ग लास्टिंग मॉइस्चराइजेशन। निविया बॉडी मिल्क 5 in 1, now at ₹85 only.
We're supercharging our remote configs with the release of our JSON editor on ByteBrew. With our new JSON editor and remote configs, we unlock the ability to remotely update a payload to your game within a single key, so you can change multiple game values with just one config. So, what are you waiting for? Sign up now and start using ByteBrew free today.
Hello everyone, this is Neil from Edureka and welcome to this Edureka live session on learning Informatica in 60 minutes. This is the second installment of our business intelligence tool series, and in our previous session we had looked at Power BI. Now Informatica is the market's leader when it comes to data management, data integration, data processing, basically anything that deals with data. Now even if you have a 3-hour session on Informatica, we would still not be able to complete it, explore it as such. However, post today's session, I'm quite sure most of you would be able to work with Informatica and begin your journey on playing with data through Informatica Power Center. Now, moving forward, let's look at today's agenda to get a better understanding of what we'll be discussing as part of this session. Now, the first thing we'll try to understand is what exactly is business intelligence. Now, Informatica is a tool that provides you a business intelligence based solution. So let's try to understand what is business intelligence first. After that, we'll try to understand what is extract, transform and load, because this is a tool that performs this operation. So it's essential that you understand how extract, transform and load works. Moving on from there, we'll talk about Informatica Power Center 10, and then we'll be looking at the various tools associated with Informatica Power Center, starting from Informatica Power Center Administrative Console, and the 4 remaining tools of Informatica would be explored through a demo as part of this session. Now I hope you guys are definitely looking forward to this session, and I request you to be a bit patient because this is a long session as such. Now we'll begin with the first topic of today's session, that is what exactly is business intelligence. Now business intelligence is one of the biggest buzzwords in today's industry. Everybody wants to know what it does, how it works out. So let's try to understand business intelligence first. Now, business intelligence basically is a group of techniques as well as tools wherein you gather your data from different sources. Once you have your data from different sources, you bring it onto a common platform that is usually a data warehouse. Once I have my data present here, that is all the data from different sources in a common point, then from this data I can perform various analysis and make it quite easy for the end user to understand this. Now to put it quite simply, let's take it in this way. Let's say your boss comes up to you and tells you, okay, gather the data from all my sales departments and then show me a result or a visualization which tells me how my sales department is performing. Now for that, first what you need to understand is that not all the departments would be using the same kind of application to store their data. So first what I need to do is that I need to bring the data from all these applications to a common platform. Once I have it here, then I can go on to perform my required analysis operation. Now this is what business intelligence lets you do. Now again, if you look at the example here, I have my data present in different databases as well as in different files as such. It could be in a SQL Server database, it could be an SAP database, Oracle or any other database as well. It could also be present in an XML file, a workbook, a PDF file, a CSV file and so forth. So I need to extract the data from all these sources, transform it to my requirement and then load it into a data warehouse. So this is what is the process that we're going to follow, that is extract, transform and load. Now this is one of the techniques that business intelligence follows and is again one of the most widely used as well. Moving forward, let's try to understand what exactly is extract, transform and load. Now to be quite straightforward, extract, transform and load basically is a 4-stage process that happens. In the first stage, you capture the idea of what exactly is present in your source system. Once you've got an idea of the data that is present here, you're going to scrub and clean this data. That is, you're going to take only the required data or the consistent data from the source. Once I've done with this, then I'll move forward and then perform the required transformation on this data. I'll only take the data that meets my requirement ahead. Finally, I'm going to load it ahead into my enterprise data warehouse, that is. Okay, so here I have the data from all the sources as well as the data that meets my requirement as such. let's now try to understand what exactly is Informatica Power Center 10. Okay, Informatica is the market's leading data integration tool. Apart from being a data integration tool, it also lets you migrate your data from different data sources. It helps you integrate your application data, the data that is present in different application, as well as it helps you transform your data as per your requirement as such. Now, talking about the various Informatica Power Center applications, these can be classified into two categories. The first would be an administrative tool. Now, in the administrative tools section, you have mainly two tools present here. You have your repository manager as well as you have your administrative console. Now, let me first address the administrative console. As the name suggests, this is basically a console through which you would be performing most of your administrative tasks. Here, you would be working with various services as well as performing operations on your domain. Let's say I have two teams who are working with Informatica Power Center in my organization, that is. Now, each one of them would be referred to as a node, and the collection of these nodes together would form my domain. So all the operation from creation, configuration, as well as management of these nodes would be done from my administrative console. Apart from that, there are various services that are associated to each of these applications as well. It could be a repository service or an integration service as well. So the creation, the starting, the stopping, the deletion of these also would be managed on this administrative console itself. Let's say you want to back up your data or you want to restore an existing data as well, then that also can be done from the existing administrative console as well. So again, this is a tool that most Informatica administrators would be playing around with. After that, you have Informatica Power Center Repository Manager. Now, this basically helps you create your various repositories, manage your various folders, as well as the users and groups. Now, again, what is a repository here you need to understand is that it's quite similar to the project folder that you would be creating in your PyCharm or Eclipse as such. So all the work that you will be doing usually is stored in a project. Here, it's referred to as a repository as such. Now, in your development side, you have mainly three tools. You have Informatica Power Center Designer, Workflow Manager, and Workflow Monitor. Your designer helps you mainly create the ETL mappings as such. Basically, what you're going to do is that you're going to define the flow of data from the source to the target definition. In between, any operation that you want would be considered to be a transformation, and that would be included as part of your mapping. Now, mappings themselves are not directly executable as such. So for that, you need to create a workflow associated with it. So once you create your workflow, then you can go on to execute your mapping, which will be done in the Workflow Manager. Now, if you want to see the status of your workflow, you want to manipulate it, you want to start it, stop it, restart it, or even check the status of an executing workflow, you can do that in Informatica Power Center Workflow Monitor as such. Now, again, just remember each of these tools because these are the most essential tools with Informatica Power Center. Now, moving forward, let's look at Informatica Power Center Administrative Console. Now, again, as the name suggests, this is the console where you would be working with, and again, you would be mainly performing operations like managing various applications, various services, creating new domain objects, configuring your node, and so forth. Now, moving forward, let me connect to my cloud service where I have already configured my Informatica Power Center. Okay, so this is my cloud service on which I have already configured my Informatica Power Center. So always make sure before you're working with Informatica Power Center, the Informatica service is running in the background. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Okay, so this is my Informatica Power Center Administrative Console. So here you can see that the service is presently not running. So I'm going to start this. Okay, and let me log into my administrative console. Again, the reason that I have started the service is because if it's not running in the background, the communication would not take place. Now again, by default, the first page that you would be looking is the manage domain. Now here basically you can manage your various services as well as associated applications running here. So let's say if you're running an email service, I'm running a workflow, and therein what happens is that after every workflow executes, I need a mail sent to me. So I can configure that here. Apart from that, you have two major associated services in Informatica that you always need to remember. You have your Informatica integration service and you have Informatica repository service. Now remember how I told you what repository service was? Basically it's like your project folder. So everything that you're going to be creating in Informatica is going to be stored in a database as well. So repository service is basically the service which collects all the objects that you're creating and stores it in your database. So let's say if you're working with a source, that would be considered as an object. Let's say if you're working with a target, that is also considered to be an object. A mapping that you create, also an object. So everything is going to be stored in a database, and your repository service is the service that does this. Now integration service is the most essential service while you're working with Informatica. This is the service that actually does all the work. Now once you've designed the workflow and the mapping, the integration service is the actual service that takes the data from the sources, performs all the operations that you have specified, and finally stores it in your target database as well. So remember these two services because these are the essential service in Informatica. Now apart from this, let's say if you are configuring your different nodes and services, so you have the option present here. Now you can see here by default I have my Informatica integration service, my repository service, and license management present here as well. There's also a single node. Now what I have done here is that I have basically installed my Informatica server and client on the same system so that it's easy for me to show you both the tools as such. But usually what happens is the server is stored on the actual server, and usually each system gets the client installed on theirs. Now there are various things that you can explore here. Let's say if you want to monitor what each one of the people are doing, each one of the nodes, you can do that as well. Or if you want to see, you want a log to refer to as what operations each one has done, or let's say you want to see who has called for which service. All these can be viewed here. So again, this is something most administrators would be working on with. Now the final thing that I want to show you here is with respect to the security aspect. Now since I am a single user, I have not defined the security users or roles here. Now what you need to understand here is that not everyone would get the same access while you're working in a company. Now let's say there's a new team who's working on an Informatica product. Usually what happens is it's the team lead who gets the access to the repository manager, and the members would usually get access to the client tools. Now this is mainly because once you make any changes with respect to the repository, it cannot be reverted back. Let's say by mistake someone actually deletes your repository, or let's say the project folder as such, then you cannot recover this. So this is where your users, roles, and security features actually come into picture. Okay, now going back to our presentation, I hope you've got a simple understanding of the administrative console as such. Now the next tools to explore, we'll explore it through a demo as part of this session. Now what we're basically trying to do is that we have a retail organization's data and we want to understand our customers better. So I have my product as well as transaction details present on flat files, and my customer detail is present in my database. I'm going to load all this data into Informatica Power Center, and then I'm going to process various transformations on this and finally store it into a data warehouse. Future, anytime that I want, the data would be present in the data warehouse from which I can create various data visualization. Now we'll break down this solution into 4 phases. Now in our first phase, we'll be using Informatica Power Center Repository Manager. Now here basically we're going to create a work folder and ensure that all the sources, transformations, mapping, and workflow would be stored here. So let me go back to my
Rise Entrepreneur. Take that first step towards freedom. There's an industry that needs your disrupting ideas. It takes courage to do what you love. We'll help you begin your journey as a business, like you, dedicated to you. Submit just 4 documents and register your business with Zolvit in just 7 days.
Remote desktop. Okay, and let me launch the Informatica Power Center Repository Manager. Now again, if any of you are actually looking to install Informatica, you can check out the link to install Informatica on your system and then begin your journey as well. So again, these are the 4 tools that you will be working with: Informatica Power Center Repository Manager, Designer, Workflow Manager, and Workflow Monitor. So let me start with Repository Manager. So this is what my repository manager would look like. So here again, you can configure your various domains, and then you can also configure your various repositories. Now it's not necessary that one domain should just have one repository, and it's something usually usually in major practices what happens is you have multiple repositories working when there are different teams working on different projects. So each project would be under a specific repository as such. Okay, now I've already configured my repository, so let me just connect to it. Okay, now by default you would not be seeing any folder present here. So first let me begin by creating a work folder. So click on create, and it's going to ask you a name for the work folder. So for today's session, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to call it live folder. Okay, one thing you need to remember is that in naming convention of Informatica, you cannot use space. Okay, so always remember that white space cannot be used in naming convention. Okay, so I'll just click on OK, and a new folder gets created. Now here there is nothing present as part of this folder, because if you go inside, there's this configuration folder present here. In future, when we are going to create the various sources, the targets, mapping and workflow, each one is correspondingly going to get a separate folder as such. Now again, as I told, repository manager can be used to check the details with respect to the projects present. So let's say you want to search for something that is present in a folder, so you can do that as well. Okay, you have the analyze option here, wherein you can analyze the various dependencies as well as search for a specific mapping or a source. Now let's say there's a specific mapping that you have created and you want to use it again, but you're not sure where exactly it's present, so you can search it by a target keyword, or let's say you want to search it completely, you can do that as well. Now again, this is something that's very important for Informatica administrators and project leaders as such. Moving forward, let's look at the second phase of our project. Okay, now here what we need to do is that we need to create a mapping through which we'll be loading our source definition, adding the transformation, creating the target definition, and finally we'll connect them all as part of a mapping. So let me go back to my Informatica repository manager and launch the Informatica Power Center Designer. Now there are two ways that I can approach this. I can either go back to my start option and launch Informatica Power Center Designer from there, or I can actually launch it from here. Now Informatica provides you this option of quick launching of each of its tools. So if I click on the designer option present here, it will automatically launch Informatica Power Center Designer. So this is my Informatica Power Center Designer. Okay, now I'll just give you a brief overview with respect to how this works. So to your left, you have the navigation panel, wherein you can find the different folders for both sources, targets, cubes, dimensions, transformations. So everything that you create here, as I said, would be considered as an object, and then it would be stored inside these corresponding folders as such. Okay, now the bottom pane is for your output. So this is where the output for any operation that you perform would be present. Now coming to the workspace. Now there are mainly 5 workspaces in Informatica Power Center Designer. We'll be mainly working with 3 as part of this session. The first is Source Analyzer workspace. Here basically any operation that you wish to perform with your source can be done. Okay, so let's say you want to load your source, you want to modify it, or make or remove specific rows from a source as well. Every of those options would be done here, because moving further you cannot manipulate the source details in any of the other workspaces. Similarly, you have the target designer workspace. So any operation you wish to perform with respect to your target definition also has to be done here. Let's say you want to create a target definition, that would be done here. Or let's say you want to modify an existing target definition, again has to be done here as well. The third and the most important workspace is our mapping designer workspace. Okay, so here what happens is, this is the place where you're going to create all the mappings and define the data flow. So let's go back to our source analyzer workspace and begin by importing our sources. Okay, now first what I'm going to do is that I'm going to import it from a database. So you just click on the source option present here and click on import from database option. Now once you do that, it is going to specify which connection do you want to use. Okay, now what you need to do is that, let's say you have a database present in your system. You need to create a connection object from Informatica to connect to the database. So again, just click on the 3 dots present here, and then you get this option of user DSN. Here press on add, and then you can specify which kind of driver it is. Now I've already configured this, so I'm not going to reconfigure it as of now. Okay, Now I need to specify the user to this database. And once I click on connect, it's going to give me which tables are visible to this user. Okay, so this is my customer tables. I'm just going to import this. So if I click on OK, it's going to load my customer table. Now, before I move forward here, let me show you the table in my Oracle database. So this is my Oracle database, which I've connected using the SQL developer. Now I want to connect to my HR_SRC database. Now here, let me select star Now let me just run this query so that you can get an idea of what kind of data we are working with. So here you have your customer ID, you have the name of the customer, the address, city, country, contact number, and their corresponding email. Okay, now there are 10,000 entries in this table as such. So we'll be loading this completely to our Informatica Power Center. Now again, with respect to the capability of Informatica Power Center, it can process thousands of rows in just minutes. Now we'll be seeing how effective and useful it is while we are executing this mapping as well. Okay, so I have loaded my customer database. Now let me load my product as well as transaction details from a flat file. So let me click on sources and import from file. So I have my customer details. So I don't want this because it's already present in my database. Now again, while you're loading a file to Informatica, you can load only a single file. Okay, so what you need to do is that select the single file and then process with the file wizard. Now this is a flat file, basically a comma separated flat file. Now it's using a delimiter rather than a fixed width difference. Now in the first step, what you basically need to do is that ensure which type of flat file it is, and then ensure that you have clicked import field names from the first line, because this helps Informatica understand the headers for the table. Okay, once you've done with this, click on next. Now in the second step, basically you need to specify whether it's using a text qualifier or if it's using a delimiter that is not comma. So you can choose anything present here. Finally, click on next and you'll be reaching the third step. This step basically helps you specify the data type as well as precision associated with respect to each column as such. So again, once you're done with this, just click on finish. Now again, what you need to understand here is that it's not the complete data that gets uploaded here. Okay, this is basically a metadata of the data that is present in your database or the flat file as such. Let me load the third file as well. So we've loaded our customers, our product. Now we need the transaction details. So again, import from file. So here I have already loaded my 3 source files. So now let's begin creation of our mapping. So let's go back to the mapping designer workspace, and here let me bring in all the sources as such. Now here you can see the separation, right? Inside the source folder there is based on flat file, and then there's based on the database. So this is how Informatica differentiates these. Okay, now let me bring in all the sources. Let me bring in the product table. So first thing I need to do is set the name for my mapping. Now again, by convention, you start every mapping with a small m followed by the name of the mapping. Again, no white spaces here. So live, m_live as such. So click on OK and we are going to create our mapping. Now You see, when I had only just one source definition, now something new has been added. This is basically a transformation that Informatica automatically creates. Okay, so this transformation is called source qualifier transformation. This gets created whenever you're working with either a relational table or a flat file source. Basically what it does here is that it converts the data types of these relational tables into Informatica supported data types. Okay, I'll just show you the difference here. Okay, just notice here where my product ID initially was of type number, it has changed to decimal. Now again, this basically helps Informatica integrate your data from different sources and is one of the major factor why Informatica is so effective while working with different data types, different data sources, I'm sorry. Okay, now simultaneously let me load my transaction details as well. And let me load in my customer tables. Okay, it's a very big workspace, so I hope you guys can see it. So again, see the same. I had loaded a relational table from my database and I had loaded 2 flat files. So for all of these, the source qualifier transformation is created. Now this is really helpful when you want to process the data before you perform any operations on this. Let's say there are 2 tables that are coming from the same database and I want to join them. I can do that using the source qualifier transformation without using any other transformation here. Okay, just go inside the source qualifier transformation and you have the option to edit the transformation. Now once you double click on any transformation, you can modify this. Now if you go into the ports option, this tells you the different ports or the column numbers which are associated from the source. Okay, so any operation that you want to change here can also be done. Now coming to the statement of joining 2 tables, that can be done here. Okay, so let's say I have 2 tables and I want to specify a join condition with respect to them. That is the user defined join. So I can just click on this arrow mark and then it will help me specify which column to add. Now since transaction is a flat file, I cannot do that. So let me go down to my customer table and just show you an example. Okay, so you can see here the user defined join field is open here. So click on this arrow mark and then I can actually choose the ports based on which I want to join these tables. Okay, so again, let's say 2 tables coming from same database, based on the condition I specify here, I can join them. Once I've specified the condition, if I click on generate SQL, it will also automatically generate an SQL for the expression that I have specified. For that is the join condition. Okay, so it's really helpful and your work gets cut short to a huge extent actually. Okay, now again, let's say I don't want all the data to come from my data source. I want to specify a filter condition. You can do that as part of my source filter condition. So here just specify which data needs to come through and it filters this data. Apart from that, if you want to ensure only distinct values come from the source, you can just click on select distinct. So there's a lot of operations that you can perform. And again, as I mentioned, Informatica is a really big pool. So spending even days on this, you would still have not explored it completely. I myself have not completely explored Informatica. So definitely this is something that is quite interesting. Now, what we'll be first doing is that let's try to join our transaction details to our product details. Basically what this will help me understand is the details with respect to the products which are bought in each of the transaction. Okay, now for that we're going to use our first transformation. Now again, Informatica has close to 38 different transformations as part of it and a lot more that keeps coming up. So which to choose is the first question that you need to understand. Now since I'm going to join only 2 data sources, I'm going to use something known as a joiner transformation. So click on transformation option here and select create option. Once you do that, you get the complete list of transformations that are available here. Now again, as I said, there are different kinds of transformations present to perform different operations, and Informatica will leave you completely puzzled with respect to how it works out. So let's try to explore each one of them in our upcoming sessions, but today let's start with joiner transformation. Okay, now again, let me name it JNR. product underscore transaction. Once I click on create, this transformation gets created. So this is my transformation. I'm done with this. So let me bring it and add it here. Now what I need to do is that I need to connect my source qualifiers to my joiner transformation, and it needs to have the corresponding columns also present in it. So for that, just click on select all, drag it and drop it into my joiner transformation. This basically does two things. Firstly, it replicates all the columns or ports present in a transformation into my joiner transformation, as well as it creates a connectivity between the source qualifier transformation and the joiner transformation that I have just created. Now, only one transformation or one source definition has been linked to my joiner transformation. It's time I link the second one. So again, select all, drag it and drop it. Okay, now I've created a connection between my source to my joiner transformation, but my job is not done here. I need to still specify the condition based on which these data has to get joined. So for that, double click on the joiner transformation and then go to the condition tab. Here basically it's going to ask you whether you need to take the master or the detail. Now let's come back to the master and detail a little later. Let me just click on add a new condition option. Okay, now here it is going to give me different columns present here. So I have my invoice number, stock code, description, quantity. So again, what I can understand from this is that it is coming from my transaction table. So my master refers to my transaction table. Detail basically is then going to refer to my product table. So here what Informatica is doing that is just labeling the two tables as master and detail to help you differentiate between them. Now usually masters are tables which have just single reference. Okay, let's say I want more detail with respect to a product, then I'm going to set the table which has the product ID as the master and the table which has relevantly all the details with respect to product as detail. Okay, so this by default has set it. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to specify the join condition. Now I'm going to join it based on the product ID. So product ID 1 from my transaction table is equal to my product ID. So if you go back to the properties table, if you go back to the ports table, here you can see the different ports that are present. So there are 17 ports present here. Now I don't want all of them to be taken forward. So what am I going to do is that I'm going to uncheck the option from input output. So you see the I and O present here. This is not 1 and 0 guys, this is I and O. So it basically helps you understand which is an input port, which is an output port. Basically again with respect to a data flow, it helps you differentiate between which is an incoming value and which value should go out. Now in our case, let's say I do want the rating nor the seller details. Let the price stay. I'm going to remove department, company, number sold, discount. I'm going to keep the invoice number, stock code. I don't need description, quantity, invoice date. I'm going to keep invoice date, unit price. Okay, customer ID, yes, definitely. And I don't want the product ID again, so I'm going to uncheck this. Basically what I have done here is that to my joiner transformation, all the ports are inputs, but only these select ports should go as output. Now this is what I have ensured by checking these options here. Okay, once I'm done with this, just click on apply and OK. So till here what I've done is that I have joined the data coming from these two tables based on a condition that the product ID from the product table is equal to the product ID from the transaction table. Okay, now based on this, all the data would get joined and sent across from here. Now again, talking about join operations, normally in SQL you have 4 different types of join. Similarly in the joiner transformation you have that. So just double click here. Let me go back to my properties. So here you have the join types option. Okay, you can either have a normal join, master outer join, detail outer join and full outer join. Basically your left join, right join. Okay, so this is how it has classified it. So we're not going to change with respect to the type of join. Okay, so clearly here, I hope you guys find it quite interesting. Now moving forward, I want to join this data, that is the details with respect to transaction and product, to my customer data. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to create another joiner transformation. So again, I can either go back to my transformation tab and select joiner, or I can select joiner from here. So this is basically a shortcut to the different transformations. Now again, you might be wondering, why am I using two different joiners to join three tables? Basically, the restriction with the joiner transformation is that you can only join two sources or two inputs from through joiner transformation. Okay, so with the second joiner, I'm going to join these three tables as such. Okay, so here first I'll bring my customer details, select all, drag it and drop it. Similarly, let me select everything from here and drag and drop it to my second joiner transformation. Now what you need to understand here is that all the tables that are present here, all the columns that are present here, how many columns are present here? I think there are 17 columns present here. Let me see in the second joiner transformation if everything comes here. Now again, if you see here, there are close to 24 ports. Now I don't need all of them as part of this. So I don't need a duplicate product ID. Select this, let me remove it. Let me remove quantity. I don't want description. So this basically happens because I have dragged and dropped it. Let's say I individually select it, then this would not happen. But again, even though these columns are present here, they are not selected as output. If you'll notice here, they are just inputs, they are not going as output. So it does not make much difference, but I don't want data inconsistency to happen here. So I'm going to remove all these ports which does not have an output specified. Again, the alternative to this manual work is that you manually drag and drop the columns. Okay. Okay, this is a bit better. Now I have to basically work with 14 different columns. Now again, let's specify the condition. So the condition here, add a new condition, is always with reference to the customer ID. So customer ID is going to be linked to the customer ID of the customer table. Customer ID from our previous join to the customer ID of my customer table. Okay. And let me go back. Let me just check this once again. Alright, everything seems okay. I'll click on apply and click on OK. So with this, we've almost completed our transformation. Now I basically have the details of the product my customer has purchased with respect to every transaction. So this becomes a highly detailed data. So let's say I want to filter it or group it with respect to the customer details. For that, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a new transformation known as aggregation transformation. Now aggregation transformation, basically, as the name suggests, helps you perform various aggregation operations. So here I'm just going to click on aggregation transformation and then again click in the workspace. So here I have an aggregation transformation created. To this, I'm going to select all the columns present here and then drop it. So automatically these get replicated here as well as linked. Now inside my aggregator transformation, I have a useful option known as group by. Okay, if you see, the last column here is group by. So I want to group by the customer details or the customer ID. Now again, there are two customer IDs here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncheck this option present here. Okay. Now this ensures that there's only going to be one customer ID and my data is going to be grouped based on my customer ID as such. So once this is set, I'm going to click on OK. But again, let me show you one interesting thing. Now aggregation transformation can also be used to specify a value to a port or a column as such. So let's say there's a column that is present here to which you want to create a new value. Now to give you a better example, let's say I have the details of my employees. Now I have their basic pay, I have their HRA, I have their TA, and then I know how much tax has to be cut. So to specify the total amount, what I'll do is I'll just use an aggregation transformation wherein I'll specify the condition based on which the total salary has to be calculated. So for that, there's this option of adding an expression. So let's say let me just show you how you're going to do that. So the moment you uncheck the output option, it basically assumes that this value is going to be the moment you uncheck the input option, it basically understands this value is going to be computed. So it unlocks the expression column present here. If you click on this arrow option, then you get the expression editor. So here you can specify the expression based on which the value has to be computed. Now again, if you look at the various functions that are present in aggregator transformation, this is the complete list. Okay, there are a lot of options that you can perform. So again, this is something that you can definitely explore. Apart from this, any expression that you wish to perform, there's also a separate transformation known as expression transformation. So again, there are different ways to approach a problem as such. So for now, let me just cancel this and click on apply. So with this, let me just summarize what we have done till here. We have taken the details of our product, we have taken the details of our transaction and joined them based on the product ID. After that, we brought in the details of the customer, and then we've joined the earlier details with the customer details as well. Finally, I have created an aggregator transformation based on which this data is going to be grouped. Finally, I need to create a target definition. Target definition basically is where my target has to be stored. Now again, there are two ways to approach this. First, I can begin by creating a target definition from scratch. Now that's a very tedious work that I have to follow. Rather than that, I'm going to take the second approach. This basically is modeling the target definition based on a transformation I have already created. Now there are two advantages of this. Firstly, it reduces of my work of designing the structure of my target table. Secondly, it copies all the columns as well as data types, precisions associated in that transformation. Now rather than telling this, let me show you how it's done. So if you want to model a target definition based on any transformation, right click the transformation and go to the option of create and add target. Once you click on this, a target definition gets created based on the transformation. Okay, so if you notice here, it's almost the same as my aggregator transformation. But if you see, I had unchecked the option for customer ID 1. So that is not present here. Now I want to modify this target definition. Now if you remember, I had mentioned you cannot manipulate the source definition or the target definition in any other workspace apart from their respective workspaces. So let's say I want to make any changes. Then I need to go to the target designer workspace. Again, for helping you understand, let me double click this, and if you go to the ports option, you cannot modify any of this present here. So let me go back to my target designer workspace, and here let me bring in the target definition. So I'll drag this and drop it. Now first, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to begin by renaming this. Now I don't like the name AGGR trans, so I'm going to rename it TGT, that is for understanding, it's a target definition, and I'll call it final. Okay, with this, click on OK, and the target definition gets renamed. Now by default, it has selected as the database type to be Oracle. Now I don't want it to be an Oracle database file. I want it to be a flat file. Then I can change it. Now there are various different types of database files that you can create. Now I'm going to choose flat file for this. Now even when I choose flat file, it's going to ask me for more information, whether it has to be delimited file or it should be a fixed width file. If you click on advanced, you have the option of even specifying what the delimiter should be. Okay, so let's say if you want to make any changes with respect to the columns, let's say you want to change the name of the column, or if you want to set the column to be key, all the operations can be done here. So basically this is the workspace where you can modify your target definition. So I'm not going to make any changes with respect to this. I'll just click on apply, click on OK, and we have our updated target definition. Now if you go back to your mapping designer workspace, first thing that you need to notice here is that the target definition present here is not updated. So let me first delete this and then bring in the updated target definition. Okay, so finally what I need to do is that I need to close this data flow. So for that, I need to link this aggregator transformation to my target definition. Again, I can either select all and then join it, or right click, and then I have the option of auto link. Auto link basically helps you link two transformations and complete your flow. Now here it's asking me from which transformation, so it should come from my aggregator transformation. Okay, so as you see, the name is similar. Now it is going to ask me to which transformation, so it needs to get connected to my TGT final transformation. So with this, the next step is basically by defining how the auto link should happen. Either should it be based on name or based on the position of the ports. For now, I'm going to keep it as name because they follow the same naming conventions. So if I click on apply now, automatically the link gets created. Finally, when I click on OK, I have completed my mapping design. Okay, now this is slightly complicated for me to get a complete view. So what I'll do is I'll just right click. Okay, let me just click on the workspace and I'll choose arrange all iconically. So this will convert the entire mapping to an iconic representation. So I have my customer table, I have my product table, I have my transaction table. Product and transaction is going to get joined to a joiner transformation. Then this join data is going to get joined with the customer data. So basically I'm performing a double join here. Once this is done, I'm going to pass it to an aggregator transformation through which I'm going to group the data based on my customer details. And finally, I'm going to store it into my target definition, which is a flat file. Okay, now the final step of this is basically to save this operation. Now, once I press Ctrl S, it is going to save this. While this is done, basically it also checks if it is a valid transformation, valid mapping as such. Now, if you see here, there's an operation which has happened. So it's trying to validate it. Now, it sees that the data flow is correct, but again, it finds a inconsistency. Now, in my aggregator transformation, customer name has an invalid reference. Okay, so thereby it ensures that it has notified me that the mapping has become invalid. So I need to go back to my aggregator transformation and check it again. So this is why Informatica is really helpful. So even while you're designing a mapping, it checks. Now, so this is something that was a mistake on my part. I had to recheck the input option here because I had shown you the expression option. It has considered this to be an invalid thing. So again, click on apply. Let me go click on OK and save this. So now you can see it has considered it to be a valid transformation because I have specified that the value of customer name is going to come as input. Are you clear till here? I hope you guys are understanding. So moving on, now is the time that we go to the third phase of our solution. Okay, in phase 3, we basically have to create a workflow involving various tasks and components which will help us execute our mapping. Okay, as I had mentioned, we have basically just defined a flow of the data from the source, what kind of operation has to happen on the data, and finally where it has to get stored. Now we actually have to initiate the data flow. For that, we need to create a mapping. So let me go back and here launch the third tool as part of today's session, that is Informatica Power Center Workflow Manager. Okay, so this is my Informatica Power Center Workflow Manager. Now again, let me just hold on to this 1 second. I'll just give you a brief overview with respect to the two workspaces that we have missed out here. Now, as you can see, there are different transformations I have created. Now let's say there's a specific transformations I want to use across multiple mappings that I'm going to create. Let's say the same aggregation operation has to be performed on different mappings. It's going to get the same input, it's going to give the same output, and the same aggregation operation has to be done. Now, rather than recreating it every time, what I can do is that I can actually make this transformation as a reusable transformation. This will basically ensure the same transformation can be used across different mappings as such. Remember how each of the source definitions gets added in the source folder and the target definition inside the target folder? Similarly, if you make a transformation reusable, it gets added inside the transformation folder. This will make it easy for me to use it again and again. Now let's say there's a series of mapping. Let's say there's a complete mapping that I want to use again and again. Let's say I want to create a basic mapping and then from there branch out for different purposes. Then I can create that, I can call that as a maplet. Again, similar to how you had a reusable mapping, a reusable transformation, you can have a reusable mapping. So the two remaining workspaces, that is the Maplet Designer workspace, basically is used to work with your reusable mapping, and the Transformation Developer workspace is used to work with respect to your reusable transformations. Okay. Now coming back to our Workflow Manager. This is a workspace where we are going to create our workflow, or basically you're going to create a task which is going to help execute your mapping as such. Okay, now again there are three workspaces here. You have your Task Developer workspace, Workload Designer workspace, and Workflow Designer. Now in our session we are just going to use the Workflow Designer workspace. Here, let me begin by creating a new workflow. So click on workflow option present here and you have the option of creating a new workflow. Now, the naming convention for creating a new workflow is that it should start with WF followed by the name of the mapping, M_live. Okay, so I'll click on OK and I have a start icon present here. This basically is helping me understand that my workflow is going to start from here. Now again, this is something that is useful. This is something that is very useful when you're working with multiple mappings, because when you're working in the industry, you don't just create one single mapping or one single operation as such. You have a lot of data, you have a lot of analysis that you have to do. So for that, you'll be creating multiple mappings, and these mappings can themselves be interrelated as well. So this is just a simple understanding for you. But again, in a real-time scenario, while you're working with multiple mappings, you're going to create a very big workflow as such. So for today's session, we'll just create a simple workflow. So for linking our workflow to a mapping, you need to create a task known as a session task. Okay, session task basically helps Informatica understand that this is the mapping that needs to get executed. So click on the session task present here and then again click on the workspace. Now it is going to ask me which mapping should be associated with this session. So I'm going to select the M_live mapping workspace. So once I do that, automatically a session gets linked. Now again, this is not complete. I know my workflow is going to start from here. I know this mapping has to get executed. So what there needs to be is that there needs to be a connectivity between these two, else these would not get executed. So drag from start and drop it to session. So this becomes a flow. Okay, now my workflow is going to start and then the following session is going to get executed, and in that session the corresponding mapping that we have defined is going to get executed as such. Now again, it's not complete. We need to actually specify from which data source the data has to come, where my flat file is present, and where the output file has to be stored as well. So for that, you need to go into the session properties. For that, double click the session icon present here and then go to the mapping option. Now here you can find the details with respect to your sources as well as your targets and transformations. Now if you click on the products, or let me take the customer. Okay, now here it is going to use a relational reader, basically because it's going to read from a relational table, and then it is going to use a connection object. Now I have already created a connection object to my database. So in case if you're wondering on how to create a connection object, you can check out our video on Informatica tutorial where I have talked in detail about creating connection objects and working with Informatica Power Center as well. So let me just cancel this. Now there are no changes here, but let's say if you're working with a flat file, by default Informatica checks in its default path for its for these source files as such. Now this is not where the source file is present. If you actually see, my source file is present in my downloads folder. Okay, this is where my source file is present, so I have to update this path. So copy this and then paste it here. Okay, so this, it will check for my transaction.csv file in this location now. Same I need to do with respect to my product table as well. Now one last thing that I need to do is with respect to my target folder. Now with target file, So in my target file there are again two things